everyone. I'm Katie Daryl, and he is Colin Blunstone of the Zombies. How are you today, Colin?
I'm very well, Katie. Very well indeed. Thank you.
Touring is right around the corner. Tell me what you have up your sleeve.
Well, I'm taking my solo band on the Rock Legends cruise, which goes out of Miami and goes into the Caribbean, which should be great fun with Alice Cooper and Styx and lots of wonderful bands. And then we're going to fly across to California and we're going to tour with the great Al Stewart, a great mate of mine and a fabulous writer. So I'm really looking forward to that. So the next month is looking really good. And in the meantime, I've just been listening today to a live recording we did of a show in November. And it's going to be a video and a live recording. And I'm really looking forward to when that's going to be issued as well. I'm not quite sure when it will be, but I've just been listening through to it today. And it sounds really good.
Well, speaking of music and being issued, I know that there are some vinyl reissues from the Zombies coming out this year. Do you remember back in the day some of the first vinyl that you ever purchased as a young lad?
I don't remember the first album I bought, I'll be honest with you, but I remember the first 45 I ever bought, and it was Dream by the Everly Brothers. And but I bought it for a girl, so I mean, I did play it, but I didn't keep it. I bought it for one of my first girlfriends, but that's the first record I ever bought, the Everly Brothers.
You know, when you broke up, you should have
very
asked for
few
it back.
albums. I know. I was just thinking the same thing. I had very few albums until probably I was in my late teens. I don't even think we had a record player in the house. But my family, especially my mother's family, were very musical. She had 5 brothers who all played in bands, but not rock and roll bands. It's a little bit early for that. They all played 2 or 3 instruments, and they all sang very well and great harmonies as well. So as much as anything, I think that was my introduction to music, was living in a family where everyone in the family played live music.
Well, we are very excited that you are heading out on tour, kicking it off with the Rock Legends cruise, and then you will be out on several dates along with Al Stewart. And this is great because we haven't seen you out on the road since 2024, when unfortunately the tour came to a halt because of our dear friend Rod having a stroke. How is Rod? How is everything with Rod? How is the band?
Yeah, he's fine. He's recovering really, really well. And I had lunch with him on Saturday, and he's great. But he has decided that he's not going to tour anymore. You know, I think he wants to protect his health now. And of course, I completely understand. Everyone else in the band is great. 2 of the guys from the Zombies are actually in my solo band. So Steve Rodford has played drums in the Zombies for 20-something years. He's in the solo band. And Soren Koch, who plays bass in the Zombies, is playing lead guitar in the solo band. He's a very talented guy.
Now, when you're going to be out on your solo tour, obviously you have your original music, but will fans of the Zombies get to hear some of those tunes as well?
They will, because as the Zombies are not going to tour anymore, when I've toured as a solo artist in the past, I've never played zombie tunes. But as the Zombies are not going to tour anymore, I will bring in some zombie material. I think maybe on this tour we'll play 4 or 5 zombie classic tunes. And then later on I'll have a think about it and perhaps bring in some more obscure zombie tracks as well.
You know, there are so many musicians and artists that are true fans of the Zombies and you specifically. I'd like to pull up a quote that I just was drawn to. Susanna Hoffs of the Bangles said that your voice is just plain sexy. How do you take compliments like that?
Well, with great surprise, actually, but also, I'm extremely grateful. I was actually in the room when she said that because she said it in the induction speech before we were inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And unfortunately, the cameras panned to my face when she said that. And I was in complete shock. I just wish I could have been a bit more cool, just sort of, yeah, whatever you say, babe, type thing. But I was extremely pleasantly surprised, of course, and slightly shocked. Susanna Hoff is fantastic. And that speech that she gave at the induction ceremony was absolutely wonderful. It was so lucid and very moving. And I'm so glad that she gave the induction speech for us.
What stories and memories come to mind when I say the British invasion?
Well, it was a crazy time, of course, but if I can just mitigate it by saying that I was just 19 at the time. And so the whole thing of being in a professional band in any country was amazing. It was hard to understand what was going on unless you just went with it and just thought, this is life. You accept it for what it is. But I mean, in America especially, it was quite an intense time in that it could get quite dangerous if you were walking down the road and anybody saw you. So it was a strange way because we had to keep to ourselves. We had to lock ourselves away. I always used to think that if I'm walking down the road, which didn't happen very often, I mustn't make eye contact with anyone. And if I see a spark of recognition in anyone, you mustn't run away because they will chase you. And then it can get very dangerous if there's a crowd of people chasing you. Somebody's going to get trampled, So you had to learn a new way of. This is my personal memories. You had to learn a new way of living. A few months before, I was playing in an amateur band, playing locally to a couple of hundred people if we were lucky. Suddenly, we're in America, the home of the blues, rhythm and blues, the home of rock and roll, the home of jazz. It's where all UK musicians long to play, is in America. This is where it all started, in America. And of course, we all wanted to come to America, and the Beatles changed everything. They were the bands that opened the doors for everyone else. And I'm eternally grateful that they did. It was a wonderful experience, very uplifting, at times a little bit scary. I don't think I was ever really aware of how big it was because I'm British and we were doing the invading. I don't think you notice it so much when you're the invader as you do when you're being invaded. And I read about it now as a big social movement as part of the opposition to the Vietnam War, and just a change that was sweeping through America. Perhaps the British invasion was part of that. At the time, I wasn't so aware because we were being kept from the public and we would just go out and play our slot and then get back into the hotel room. So I don't think I was so aware of the whole picture, the wide picture of what was going on. But it's interesting to read about it now.
Do you ever remember what was the biggest band fight that comes to mind? Because certainly there were arguments along the way.
When we were recording Odyssey and Oracle, Time of the Season is the last track on the album, Odyssey and Oracle. And Time of the Season was actually the last song that was written. And we were practicing it in the morning before we went into Abbey Road. And Abbey Road is very expensive. We had a very limited budget. And so it was very high pressure recording. And Rod is very particular, and quite rightly so, about how a song should be phrased. And he was encouraging me to phrase it in a certain way. And I was struggling because I knew we were running out of money. I'd got a big clock in front of me and I got a red light underneath it. And I knew the red light meant we were spending money and the clock meant we were running out of money. And so there was quite a row going on between Rod and I while we were singing Time of the Season. So while I'm singing, it's the time of the season for loving, I'm also saying to Rod, for God's sake, we haven't got time for all this. And he's shouting back through the headphones at me, and there were words being spoken while we were talking about the beauty of love and so forth. And that will always stick in my mind. There were other instances, but I think mostly we got on pretty well, really. There was another one I remember. We're in Chicago, and there were hundreds of girls in the hotel just running around. And in the end, luckily, we were kicked out of the hotel because the manager said we can't cope with hundreds of girls running around the hotel looking for the zombies and the searchers. We were touring with the searchers. Meanwhile, Rod and I were locked up in our room, and I wanted the TV on, and he wanted the TV off. On, off, on, off. And in the end, he stormed across the room and knocked me right off my feet. And the two of us crashed down on this rather old-fashioned single bed that had wooden sides to it. And we snapped the bed in half, absolutely snapped it. The weight of our body snapped it in half. So we sneaked out of the hotel and we got some glue and some string. We glued it back together and put string around it, and it seemed fairly strong. And But then at the last minute, as I said, we were thrown out of the hotel. So I never got to really test it, whether it would take my weight or not. And I just hope the next people in that room weren't honeymooners, because I think the earth might have moved for them, because the bed might have collapsed.
Oh, baby, it was
But,
so good. We broke the bed. Colin, thank you so much for sharing the stories, the memories, and the music with me today. I really appreciate it. Tickets are available. So those of you who are a fan of Colin, the Zombies, and music in general, make sure you log on, grab yourself some tickets. There's the Rock Legends cruise coming up on February 13th. And then Colin will be heading out and hitting Arizona and California. And he will be with the Al Stewart and the Empty Pockets for those dates. And I'm sure many more will be popping up throughout the year. Thank you so much for spending time with me.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's been great. Thank you so much.